Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me a truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. The Names Not Numbers Oral History Film Documentary Project is remembering the stories of the Holocaust and is telling the story of the Holocaust for the world to hear, for the world to learn, and to inspire future generations to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred and intolerance. This unique project is in its 16th year. Over 2,500 survivors and 6,000 students have participated in it worldwide. The students were instructed by teachers and professionals. They learned interviewing techniques from journalists. They learned filming techniques and editing skills from documentary filmmakers. The students interviewed, filmed, and edited the 2-hour interviews with each survivor to make 20-minute oral histories that are compiled in the Names Not Numbers documentary at the school. You're about to view the documentary Names Not Numbers, a movie in the making. This film chronicles the students as they are being trained by the professionals and includes their reflections. In it is embedded approximately 10 minutes from each interview. This is the students' work. They're filmed and edited interviews. Through this project, our students are preserving history, and they are the witnesses to the witnesses.
Right away, we had to keep our business open on Shabbos, and that's when it started our problems. It did not take long until they took us to the ghetto.
The Germans came in and started killing the Jews, pick all the Jews that were able to fight back and line them up and shoot them.
Always talked about the terrible fear of those bombs coming down, the fear of a German soldier finding them. It was a fearful, difficult year.
As you know, when you read about something that happened so many years ago in a book, you never met anyone who met anyone who met anyone was there. We can read about the Revolutionary War, we can read about the Constitutional Congress. It's so distant. But when you have someone who can share with you their firsthand experience, that is a level of involvement, of enmeshment, of learning that is impossible to be replicated. You are the last generation that will have the opportunity to speak with, to learn from those who unfortunately had to live through the atrocities of the Holocaust. That creates an opportunity for you and a responsibility for you, because now you have to take that mantle, you have to take that level of understanding and appreciation and make sure that it's mamshich, that it continues from one generation to another. And in Yirtzeh Hashem, you will find it a very, very inspiring, perhaps sometimes difficult, but a very important part of your chinuch experience.
It's the greatest miracle in the history of miracles. It's never, ever been duplicated that one nation, one race, one group of people have been the recipients, the ones who receive the most unbearable, inhumane treatment generation after generation after generation, and we're the last man standing. It's beyond. It's like such a miracle that you can't help but, wow, it's a miracle. That the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, are animals on 2 feet. There was never the level of brutality and evil done to the Jewish people on such a grand scale, men, women, and children, has never been repeated. In all those 4,000 years of our survival, there's been nothing compared to what happened just 80 years ago between 1933 and 1945. The story is that we will never become extinct. We will always be here. But we have to share our experience of being here as recipients of this responsibility, to share with others, to interview people, get a feeling for what it meant to be a Jew and living in 1933 to 1945.
Today, 75 years after the end of the Holocaust, among young Americans, 66% of them could not identify Auschwitz as a concentration camp or death camp. But we have documentation. We have unique historical documents that preserve certain facets of life during the Holocaust in real time. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, after a trip to a concentration camp in April 1945, wrote, "I made the visit deliberately in order to be in position to give first-hand evidence of these things if ever in the future there develops a tendency to charge these as allegations and that they are propaganda." Today, the pasuk from Parashat Ha'azinu is more timely than ever. Zechor Yemot Olam. Remember the days of old. Sha'al avicha v'yagedcha. Ask your father, and he will tell you. This is the last generation that has the privilege to hear the survivors' testimonies firsthand. You are the direct beneficiaries to hear these firsthand testimonies. The survivors and the students are telling the story of the Holocaust for the world to hear, for the world to learn, and to inspire future generations to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred and intolerance. You are learning history, recording history, and preserving history through their work.
One day, they told us that we are going to be taken to a more secure place because the Russian army is coming closer.
We watched a video about Moshe Avital, and what we took away from it is that he was able to stay a frum Jew.
I was a bit sorry for him, but I was also inspired that he went through it, and not a lot of people know exactly what happened in the Holocaust, and I think it's pretty cool to learn about what happened, and it's also a great opportunity to learn about what happened to our past generations.
That way I could hear the stories firsthand, because a lot of people don't have this opportunity to, and I could pass it on to other people.
Our generation is important for us to meet survivors because now there's a bunch that we're already losing and there's very few left. We're the last ones to see them before they're already gone.
I've read books about the Holocaust, but now I'm hearing from an actual Holocaust survivor things about what's happening. It gives me a little more of a feel of what questions I should ask.
It's inspiring because it shows that even what happened to us, we still have remnants of our past heritage, and we're still around.
After watching the film of Dr. Moshe Avital, I felt inspired to make my own interview.
The session that happened today was an explanation about how we will be interviewing the Holocaust survivors.
Soroka, Mrs. Shoshana Soroka is my name. I'm the editor of the Jewish Home magazine. I'm going to give you tips on how to really conduct a much broader type of interview, a real interview, and how to specifically ask questions to the Holocaust survivors that you're going to be meeting.
What questions we should be asking them about what we should do before the interview, what we should do after the interview, and all the things in between that.
When you sit down with your Holocaust survivor and help them share their story, you're giving that story and that person a voice. You want to get to know that survivor so well.
Is that you should always prepare in advance for interview, and you should try, and if you're trying to get a story, you should try asking them questions in chronological order.
So important the way you phrase questions. You need to stay away from yes and no questions.
Really, you shouldn't ask yes or no questions because you really want an interview to be more like a story.
We're going to use words like tell me. We're going to use words like describe.
Ask questions that will get more information out of them.
You need to ask more like questions start with like describe.
What was it like?
Or can you tell me? A yes or no question wouldn't get a story, because we want the interviewee to say the story.
And then we're asking them to share the story with us, and that's going to be how we're going to really pull that story out of them.
Eye contact is good because it shows that you kind of cared instead of like trying to continue it.
You show them that you're listening.
And different things that make them and try to make them feel as best as they can, even though because their stories are very, very emotional.
Sometimes when you're asking these questions, they will start to cry.
Maybe give them a tissue or two, and we should wait, and then we can ask them the next question.
It's okay. It's okay that they're crying, and it's actually pretty expected for them that they will be crying.
Don't stop them, just let them continue and go until they stop on their own.
You wait for them to overcome their emotion. Wait until they're ready to continue, because it's a very personal thing to share with somebody. So really, when you guys are going to get your Holocaust survivor to sit down with and share the story, you just have to keep in mind that it is such a privilege to be able to listen and help record the story that they're going to share with you.
I think it was an interesting class, taught us how all the equipment worked and why everything is placed where it is and why it needs to be there. We learned how to use the cameras and audio before the interview.
So the screen is almost made into almost like a tic-tac-toe board where it's like a 3x3 with lines going down. And you want to get the person's face into the line on one of usually the side to the left of the person videoing.
The shot sizes are close up, medium, and wide.
I've had great-grandparents who have been in the Holocaust and wanted to hear other people's stories of how it affected their life. It feels pretty good to be able to hear their stories.
When you meet the Holocaust survivor, you see him or her in person more legit than just watching a video.
It gives you a better understanding of what life was back then, and I'm looking forward to finding out things that I didn't know before that now hopefully I should know.
I'm looking to gain a lot of information, a lot of stories that I'm able to pass down and tell about so people could learn about it.
I'm the next one in the chain, carrying over the stories and events of what happened there, and I think it's a very important thing to do.
So that their legacy is passed on to future generations.
I'm looking forward to meeting her and hearing her story in person. I'm going to interview Judith Wahlberg.
I'm a little excited. I'm a little nervous to interview. It's gonna be maybe some scary stories. Overall, I'm excited.
I am going to interview my grandfather, Shul Yosef Pach. This is my real first time to hear his full story since I've only heard very few parts of it.
I'm feeling kind of nervous because it's my first time interviewing a Holocaust survivor.
It's inspiring and helpful to hear the story of a person that went through a lot of troubles that are unimaginable.
You see how they feel straight from them rather than reading a book. It's less personal.
I feel excited that I'm going to be able to learn more about the Holocaust and how the people were able to survive.
I'm going to interview someone who has a lot of belief in Hashem and a lot of emunah and has a lot of hardships in their life that they overcame and still talk about it to this day. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I know not a lot of people will get to do this after me, and I think it's a very great accomplishment when you're done with it also.
Names, not numbers.
My name is Judith Wahlberg. I was born August 21st, 1926. In Romania, it was called a small town, Răzavlea. We had 2 shuls, a smaller one, a bigger one. Everybody of the 150 Jewish families were frum. There was no such thing as not Shomer Shabbos. We had a store of materials. We did normal, like people here, business. Father was a big Talmud Chacham. He was learning for 8 years after he got married. Then he went into business. And we lived a very nice, normal life. We were 7 siblings. We were happy children. If I got a dress and a pair of new shoes for Pesach, I felt like I was happy. I felt like a queen. The Shabbos was beautiful. There was Achdus, there was COVID. I loved it. It was Romania. Until Germans gave over that part for the Hungarians, because it was Romania. The Hungarians were Nazis. And that's when it started our problems.
My name is Joseph Pacht, known as Shol Yosef ben Aaron HaKohen Pacht. I was born in Poland, in Warsaw. It was November 25th, 1938. At that time, it was my father, my mother. I had an older sister, and myself. My father was a professional photographer. At that time, being a photographer was a major deal. You needed a certificate because you had to work with chemicals, and because of his profession, it helped him very much to stay alive.
My name is Mrs. Respler. I was born in Antwerp, Belgium, January 1940. Very, very beautiful, very beautiful. There were yeshivas for children, for adults, for high schools, all kinds of education there. And also there was beautiful Yiddish life there, from people, Rabbanim, very choshev people were there. My mother's name was Lotta Lamb, and my father's name was Samson Lamb. Grandfather, whose name was Mordechai Lamb, he had an open house. He was a very wealthy man, and his main thing was Hachnosas Orchim. He had every kind of Jew coming into the house, no matter what kind of person you were. He was an amazing, amazing person. And also he had the biggest library in Belgium of all kinds of Sfarim, all kinds of books. And big Gedolim used to come to look at his Sfarim. They were very precious. They were from head to toe, ceiling to floor, bookcases and bookcases. The family felt quite safe because, people always feel it's not going to happen there. They heard from far things were happening. They knew Hitler was getting very active, and in other little countries things were happening. But my father did not feel safe, and that's the beginning of my story, really. He knew something's going to happen. He just felt it.
When they invaded Poland, the Germans came in and started killing the Jews. So the paratroopers would come in, land with airplanes, and pick all the Jews that were able to fight back and line them up and shoot them, so that when the army came in, they wouldn't have any resistance. My father was one of those that they picked up and they lined them up against the wall and started shooting at them. My father fainted, and they put him on a truck over there, and he woke up in the truck alive, and he escaped. After that, the Jews decided that it would be safer if they move into the Russian zone. But there was a political question because the Russians wanted you to become citizens, and if not, they threatened to send us to Siberia. So overnight, they came one night and they take all the Jews and they took us to Russia, to Siberia. In a way, it saved our lives, because all the Jews that stayed and did not go to Siberia, within a month or two, Germany came in and killed them all. Going to Siberia, it actually saved our lives. Now, Siberia at that time is not what it is today. At that time, it was a wilderness. Trees and cold. Parents had to cut down the trees. We were suffering from cold and hunger. We stayed over there for about a year or two, and then they moved us more into Russian, which was more occupied and more with people as far as over there.
Hitler gave over that part, Transylvania, to the Hungarians. And the Hungarians were really bad, terrible. Right away, we had to keep our business open on Shabbos, and that's when it started our problems. We were all gathered and taken to the ghetto. Life was very bad under the Hungarians, and that's when our tzuras started. Just about 6 weeks in the ghetto. Life in the ghetto was terrible because we didn't have the house, we didn't have anything. But it wasn't life-threatening. Well, we were a lot of families in one house. Very little, but we still had what to eat. We got a little soup, a small piece of bread, but you could live on that. They were waiting we should be together getting into the cattle cars to take to Auschwitz.
It was only my mother, my father, and I were a small family, and he knew something's going to happen. He just felt it. He had this emunah that I just have to get out of here. And he told his family he's about to leave. He's going to leave everything and go. And they laughed at him and they said, "Mr. Lamb, where are you going? Hitler's going to change his mind. Things are going to change. Things are going to get better." It's quiet. He was still living a sort of normal life. He said, "I'm not listening to anybody." He picked himself up with my mother and myself, and he started to run. Where he was running, he didn't know. He knew he had to get out. My mother took with her just a few pictures because she said that you can never replace. We first had to go to France, and we hid there for over almost a year. And I still remember my mother telling me constantly until the last days, the fear. First of all, bombs were flying all over. It was wartime. Soldiers were around, and I had to hide under buildings in all kinds of places that Germans shouldn't find them. It was a fearful, difficult year. They ran from place to place. They didn't know where they're going to be. They couldn't find anything. The borders were all closed already. They couldn't find any place to get out. And it certainly wasn't going to go back to Belgium. They ended up in Spain. And sure enough, there's a cargo boat. This is a cargo boat. A cargo boat really is a boat for cattle. And that cargo boat could only fit 15 people. Well, guess what happened? There were 1,000 people on that cargo boat because they were so desperate to get out. 500 people, imagine, had a passport to New York, and 500 people had a passport to Cuba. Ours was to Cuba. And my father said he doesn't care where he goes, just has to get out of Europe. So they went on this boat, very difficult. This after a whole year of running and hiding, and now not know what to do with a baby, they had to take this difficult high seas boat. Enemy ships were all over the waters. They didn't bother us. No one touched us. And the interesting thing is that this was in 1941. Somehow our boat, they left alone. You know why? Because Hashem wanted that to happen. And Hashem knew that we have to build our families, and He knew that we have to survive. It was really Nes Gadol that we arrived to Cuba.
In Russia, we had to put this thing down, and we had to march every Sunday singing. And the song was that we are for Russia, for Stalin. Like, za Rodina, za Stalina, we would work and march. Один, два, три, четыре, пять, za Stalina, za Rodina. There was nothing to eat, nothing to dress. This is what we looked like. Gave us ration. They gave us a loaf of bread for the day. A lot of people starved from hunger. A lot of people gave up. It was so bad that people just, committed suicide in a sense. I remember personally being hungry, crying, I'm hungry. Ashtika labroit. That I remember. I was 4 or 5 years old at that time, and we were cold. It was not a pleasant place to be. When we moved a little bit further into Russia, it was a little bit better because my father was a photographer. At that time, they employed him to take pictures of dead people. It was to put into the paper, and by doing that, we were able to eat. We got bread and potatoes and things of that nature. This is why I'm saying that we certainly survived because my father was able to do that.
We went straight to Auschwitz for 3 days without any facilities, without any food. We arrived in Auschwitz. The doors opened and the Germans started to scream, "Heraus, heraus!" We left everything, we had their things, because we thought we go to work, and there was a selection. They selected the ones that were able to work. The idea I know, they needed people through the war. They should, when they will need people to work in the factories, so they took the healthy ones like this to go, and the ones like the children, the grandparents, everybody, my whole family like this, that was the gas cup. That's when we saw last our brothers, little and sisters, and parents and grandparents. I went with my sister to the right, which meant they will eventually need us to work. They needed 3,000 women to work in their ammunition factories instead of their own. We were transferred. Now we have a different selection. It was Mengele who did the selection. He was the second Hitler. He came and he selected like this. This way you go to the gas chamber, this you go to work. My sister was 9 years older. She was stronger. So she was to go to work, meaning to be transported where they needed. And I was to go to the gas chamber. Now here comes the miracle that Hashem wanted me to live. Mengele's girlfriend came. As she came, he turned around to have jokes and laugh with her. My sister recognized me here by a shape that I have, and she pulled me back. Would they have seen? They would have killed us both. She didn't care. She pulled me back, and she saved me. Hashem wanted me to live. I cannot see it as another way.
Cuba was very, very different. It is very, very hot. It's near the equator, one of the hottest places in the world. No air condition, no fans, but you know when you're free, you're so happy, you don't care. So we lived in Cuba for a few years because we knew the war was taking a while. We couldn't leave until the war was over. But it was a beautiful Yiddish community. Our people, when we arrived, don't get depressed and say, oh, we can't do anything. They made a life. They didn't know how long they're going to be there, but they knew that they have to make a Yiddish life and continue. We love children my age. I was a little girl there. And they wanted to make sure that we can continue with our Yiddishkeit. We made a shul. They had a shorcha to check the chickens. We were able to go to the farm and get kosher milk. The boys learned Gemara. I learned how to daven from a siddur in Cuba. We made sure that everyone continues the Yiddish life. And that was an amazing thing. Everybody found a job. My mother made a little restaurant in the house. She had a little round table, I still remember, in the living room. There were many men there that some weren't married, some didn't know where their wives were. Some of them left their wives and to a different country. So she had a lot of men that had no way of making supper for themselves. And she made a parnasa by inviting these men and cooking for them. My father, who came from a family of diamond dealers, because in Belgium the main thing was diamonds, and he got a job in it's called sharpening and polishing diamonds. Now the Cubans, they never saw Jewish life. They didn't know what this was about. But the other miracle was that they were very good to us. We were there, I was 5 years old, and I went to a a little kindergarten. And of course, I knew Spanish. We all spoke Spanish. That's the language we all had to speak. Everybody learned it very quickly. I had all my songs and all my lessons were in Spanish. But that was it. I didn't go any further after that, because after that, the war was over, and then we came to America.
Towards the end of the war, about 1945 or so, Polish government made a deal with the Russian government to take back their citizens for a few reasons. One of the reasons is they wanted some of the men to come back and help them fight the German army. So my parents were part of the group that went back to Poland. At that time, we went back to Krakow. In Krakow at that time, we experienced anti-Semitism from the Polish people. They were afraid of the Jews, that they came back to get their money back and so forth. So they tried to discourage us to coming back. We did get a lot of help from the send young people with money to bribe whoever they needed in order to save us and get us out of Poland. From Poland, they got us into Austria. We traveled in a way almost at night, where we would sneak in and out. And during the day, we were in barns where the horses went out to pasture. We stayed hidden. At night, the horses were in barns, and they took us further out. So it took about 2 days to get us into Austria. And Austria, we were safe, but we stayed a very short time, for a few months. From Austria, they got us back into. They took us to Germany. We were in 2 or 3 DP camps. One was called Bad Reichenhall. This was the first one. Then we went to Gabersee, and then to Fernwald. My father, he was also president of Bad Reichenhall, which is the first DP camp, for about 2 years. In the DP camps already, as far as over there is concerned, we had a lot of freedoms as far as that, running around. We learned languages because I was in all those places. So you pick up the language of the place. So I was able to speak 4 or 5 languages, or 6. We learned a lot of things to do to get by. For example, with pen and knife, I can make a whistle from a tree branch. I can make a whistle from, they used to have packages, and the packages would be wrapped around with metal things. Now it's made out of rubber. We would take those metal things and make whistle out of. So I'll show you what it looks like and what it sounds. This is what the metal is, and we would twist it around, and it becomes a whistle. We had to make our own, because we didn't have any things, we had to improvise and come up with all sorts of things. If you don't have, whatever you have, you make do with what you have and go further. For entertainment, we could climb trees. We would climb up and down the barracks, rain pipes. We played a lot of soccer. You run. It was a pleasure. And another thing that we did is we played chess. Also, there's my parents. One of the things in the house, my father and my sister taught me how to play chess. Was something we were able to spend time and joyfully do that. So once they got a visa and they were able to leave to the United States, England, Canada, wherever, they closed the DP camp and we moved into the other one. We stayed in Germany for about 5 or 6 years, and we didn't have any family to sponsor us. So the Hayast, the American Joint, sponsored our family and thousands others, and we came to the United States in February of 1951.
We were liberated by the Americans, and then we could go wherever we wanted. We just didn't have where to go. We were all in a daze. We woke up and we just saw no SS. Nobody was there. They ran away. And the Americans were in, and we couldn't understand what it is until they explained us nicely. You are free. We'll take you from here. We'll give you everything. They were wonderful, but we ourselves, from what we went through, we were like in a daze. Is that possible? But it was. The only thing that was horrible to find out, because we always hoped that we'll meet our families. That was not it, because we had no family. They made a beautiful meal for us, but they were very scared because when you were hungry, and a lot of people died because they ate too much. So they realized, and they made it just little. They gave us everything we wanted. They were wonderful. We started to see the world and to see life when the Americans, they took us out from that place. They took us to their place where they were. Beautiful rooms they gave us and everything. It was a different life, thanks God for that.
Well, we heard that the United States was gives the best opportunity. We had cousins over here, but we didn't have any real relatives to support us, and all the Jews were coming over here. So my parents decided that the safest and best place would be come to the United States. So we applied, and it took a while. The Hayas sponsored us. It's a Jewish company, sponsored us, and we came on a ship called General Stewart. It took about 2 weeks to travel. It was wintertime, which means we were seasick. I was seasick. We landed in the United States on Lincoln's birthday. So that means we couldn't get off the ship because the people weren't working. But Baruch Hashem, because of that, it worked to our advantage. While we were docked over here, so the Baba Rebbe sent shalichim to the ship to fill Bochem to come to the yeshiva. He was also first studying, came to the United States only 2-3 years before that. On the west side, he had one building over here, and he was trying to build a yeshiva. He made a wonderful offer. No tuition, room and board. And I'm laughing because at that time when we came, everybody was penniless. We didn't have any food or anything like that. My father had to find a job. My mother had to find a job as far as that. So it was a wonderful offer. My father agreed, and I went to Baba. And that was the most wonderful thing they did. Every night they would tutor me, because when I went over there, I hardly knew Ivra, because I had no chance to learn or read or write or anything like that. But within a year or two, almost every night I had a Balcha learn with me. I wanted to learn English. I knew how to speak and curse in 5-6 languages except English. Outside of the yeshiva, everybody spoke English. Even the Jewish boys only spoke English. I went to Chaim Berlin. In Chaim Berlin, I stayed through high school and part of college.
Very, very excited about getting out of Cuba and going to a place that, like United States. I mean, I can't tell you what United States would mean to us. We took a plane. I do remember having a stewardess on there. I do remember. And they gave us gum because of the altitude. We had to chew gum. The first time I ever had gum at 5 years old. That plane went to Florida, and from Florida we took a train to New York. All my father's brothers, sisters, and grandchildren got killed in Auschwitz. His parents, interesting enough, came to New York in 1942 while we were in Cuba. He was a very, very wealthy man. He was the head of the bank there the president of the bank in Belgium, and probably with a lot of money, somehow he got out. He took a boat to Kew Gardens. And why Kew Gardens? Because that was a collection of the Belgian and German Jews. And we were able to get an apartment because they got us an apartment. So we came straight to Kew Gardens in 1945. Kew Gardens was just the beginning of a lot of refugees. Most of the people there were from Germany, from Belgium. You would hear German and French all over. We came to a studio apartment. A studio apartment is one room, a bathroom, a kitchen, a little eating kitchen, and a little hallway. That's it. So my brother came, and he slept in the little hallway. A year later, we got a call from my aunt. She survived the war, and she lived in Belgium. And she said, you know, right after the war, there were many children in orphanages because mothers and fathers were so scared that children would die, they threw them in all these orphanages. And she comes to an orphanage, and she sees a little girl there, a name. Her name is Sylvie Lamb. Now, that's my family name, and my father knew that his brother, who was taken to Auschwitz, had a little girl, Sylvie. He said, well, how come she survived? They all died. All the children died from the family. What happened was they found out, which they found, of course, now when they were in Kew Gardens, many years later, that when we left, this little girl, Sylvie, was in the hospital for a day or two because she was having her tonsils taken out. And while that was going on, her parents and her brother were taken to Auschwitz. And she stayed in this orphanage for a few years. She didn't know she had parents. She was 2 years old. She didn't know that her mother and father were not here anymore. She doesn't remember what her mother and father looked like. Has no recollection of them. So from 42 till 46, she was in this orphanage. It wasn't even a Jewish orphanage. It was all kinds of children from all kinds of religion were in that orphanage. She had no idea of Yiddishkeit. She didn't know anything. And this little girl comes out after the war. They had to get all these children out. What to do with the children? They dispersed them all over. Many of them went to Goyish homes, by the way. They didn't even know they were Jewish. And they were brought up as Goyim. But this little girl was very lucky. Hashem watched her. And Hashem said, this little girl is going to have a Yiddish life. So my aunt called my father, and they decided this girl must be that little girl. They got a hold of a lawyer. They made all kinds of arrangements. They didn't have to change the name because her name was Lamb. And my parents decided they're going to raise her as her own daughter. This little girl comes all by herself, 6 years old, with a little suitcase on a boat. We picked her up from Port Authority, I remember. She came to live with us. You have to understand, this little girl didn't know what a family was like. She didn't know what mother, father was like. She had no idea what this was all about. As a tribute to the wonderful miracle that they saved were my parents. They gave her a life just like me. I was 6 years old already. And I was so happy to have a sister. I never felt that I was deprived. She became my sister, and she's still my sister. They brought her up as their own child. My parents had very little money. We both went to yeshivas. We both went to Jewish schools. We went to Beis Yaakov camps. Whatever I did, she did too. And those were her parents. And you know something? She said her life started at 6 years old when she came to live with my parents.
We were in Paris. From Paris, everybody could get out. People had friends in America, family, and you could get through them. From other places, we couldn't. And that's how we got, my future brother-in-law got the news that we're alive, and that's how he took us with the first cruise ship from Paris to Spain. And we went with a cruise ship to New York, from New York to South America. We were from Auschwitz practically naked, and the people were, you know what a cruise ship is, very elegant. They had every night bars, McManus's, and we were there, Nebuch, like this, and we only ate kosher already. And I remember the guy sat at the table when we asked for hard-boiled eggs and things. You know, lady, this is filet mignon, the fanciest meal. We said, oh, we are vegetarians. And that's how we went through. We arrived from one place to the other. The reason it took 35 days, because we stopped. We stopped in Cuba, and in Cuba, somebody saw our name, and they recognized, they came, they took us off the boat for 5 days. That was something beautiful.
My message is, even though when times look tough, Hashem is watching over us and doing what's best for us.
Don't take things for granted. Always believe in Hashem, and whatever happens, it's always for the best.
Don't wait for someone to ask you to do something. Do it for them. If you see they're in trouble, help them.
I think it's important for us to learn about tragedies because it could teach us lessons, could become thankful for everything we have, and we realize that we have a lot.
Don't think it's just a thing in the past because history repeats itself and you can really learn from these situations in modern day.
It's inspiring because it really teaches me that almost no matter what, with challenges coming your way, you can rebuild and keep moving on.
If somebody needs something, help them. Whether they ask, and sometimes they don't need to ask, they don't know how to ask, but you see, they need it, they'll be here.
Sometimes things can get hard and you feel like giving up. These guys have pushed through and not given up.
You should always have achdus. You should never take stuff for granted. You should always at least work a little bit to make it seem like you actually did something to make it like you actually deserved it.
When hard things happen, Hashem will always be there and help you.
We have to continue with Yiddishkeit. We have to continue with our lives. And that is a Hashem, as Emunah, there's B'tzochen. And anything that happens in life doesn't always go so easy. You know that Hashem is there, and Hashem will be there, and He'll be your best friend forever.
To listen to elders and what they have to say because they experienced a lot in their life and they could really teach you things that you never knew before.
If something goes wrong, something bad happens, just still have faith and you'll see everything will work out for the best.
Because it's important to learn from our past so we can learn from people who are greater than us.
Always believe in Hashem and stay on the path of Torah and never leave from it.
My message is to you to learn Torah and to love everybody. This is what Hashem wants.
Means that numbers, I think, means that we're showing they're each their own unique person. They're not just a bunch of numbers. They have more to them.
Survivors are heroic, brave, resilient,
emotional,
Devout.
Inspirational.
I would just like to thank all of the survivors for telling us their stories to make sure that the Holocaust is never forgotten.
Now that I heard her story, I would like to tell other people about the experience that I went through with hearing a Holocaust survivor's experience.